ओम सदाशिवसमारंभां शंकराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ओम You can wait for a few minutes. Okay, or we can start reading. Prasanna ji, please start reading from The Blind Man's Elephant.
The Blind Man's Elephant. I'm sorry, which topic we are reading now? The next 12, is it?
Adhyatma Jnana Nityatva, we are reading.
Okay. The Blind Man's Elephant. The facts that our senses reveal is like the truth the blind man gained after each of them felt only one part of it. In this traditional story, several blind men came upon an elephant, an animal none of them had encountered before. For a few minutes before the elephant's keeper took it away, each of the blind men was able to touch or grasp some portion of the elephant, and each was convinced that he knew what an elephant is like. They argued vigorously amongst themselves. One, who had put his arms around one of the huge's legs, said, "An elephant I know very well from my personal experience is like a pillar." Another, who had laid his hands flat against the elephant's vast side, said, "No, it is like a wall." The others had different claims. "An elephant is like a rope," said the one who had grasped the tail. "Idiots, you are all deluded. An elephant is like a sharp pointed spear," implored the one who had touched a sharp tusk. The blind men each confidently claimed knowledge on the basis of having touched one part of the animal. In what each said, there was some truth in the untruth, and the untruth was connected to the truth. Thus, the knowledge each had was an untruth containing an incomplete truth connected to truth. Further inquiry into each of the false truths by the mistaken blind men would lead to recognition that it was untruth or at best incomplete truth. In fact, every untruth is always in some sense connected to the truth, although perhaps not in such an obvious sense as a leg or trunk is connected to the elephant. There is truth when an untruth is known as untruth. In this sense, every untruth is connected to truth. In another sense, there is a connection because the very status of untruth is dependent upon some truth, a fact that the untruth contradicts or does not completely or adequately reflect the truth. For example, in the classic Vedanta illustration of the rope snake, in which a coil of rope mistakenly is thought to be a snake, an inquiry into the nature of the snake will reveal the rope being the truth of the snake. Thus, in the study of Vedanta, Shravana includes the analysis of untruth in order that, with the recognition of the untruth as untruth, the proper kind of inquiry can be undertaken to reveal the truth. The truths, sense organ data, and logical conclusions based on sense data gathered through the use of one's ordinary means of knowledge are no different from the blind man's elephant truths. At best, such truths are only functional, negatable facts, immediately useful but subject to contradiction by other truths and by the complete truth. The truths of various philosophies, psychologies, religions, and other belief systems also fall under the heading elephant truth, that is, they offer some truth contained in untruth or untruth connected to truth. The elephant truth of the other means of knowledge of the philosophies is contradicted by what is said in Vedanta. Just as the fact of the complete elephant contradicts the incomplete, wrongly identified truths of its parts, so does the absolute truth of what is contradicts both the negatable truths of the pramanas that reveal objectifiable reality and the conclusions of philosophies based on incomplete truth or untruth. Vedanta contradicts the truth of one's senses and the conclusions of widely accepted belief systems, philosophies, and psychologies. But what Vedanta says cannot be contradicted by anyone. Vedanta is not contradictable.
So we were basically discussing this Savanam, Mananam, Nidhyasanam and commitment to that. The value is basically the commitment to Sravanam, Mananam, Nidhyasanam. So, yeah. Is there any doubt or anything in this part, or we can just move on to the next?
We'll move on. Shraddha,
Please,
shall I continue?
please continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, continue.
Shraddha, suspension of judgment pending discovery. All means of knowledge, pramanas, require suspension of judgment pending discovery, Shraddha, in their ability to deliver what is expected of them in order that one may do whatever is necessary to use the pramana. Eyes are the means of knowledge for seeing. To see, one must engage one's mind behind the eyes, open the eyelids, turn one's head in the right direction, and do whatever else that is necessary. Perhaps turn on the light or put on eyeglasses, whatever may be called for under the circumstances. A person who knows himself to be blind would not be motivated to try to engage his mind behind his eyes or to turn on the light. But a person who has Shraddha, that his eyes can see, will be able to surrender his mind to his eyes, take whatever other steps that may be necessary in order that his eyes may do their job. Similarly, with Shraddha, one must surrender to Vedanta in order that it may perform its function as a pramana for knowing oneself. Since Vedanta seems to contradict all one's usual means of knowledge, one must approach it with greater Shraddha than the accorded to one's senses. However, Shraddha is not blind belief, it is suspending the judgment pending discovery. I must come to the words of Vedanta ready to have my old ideas contradicted, prepared to grant Vedanta the same latitude that I would give to a wise and respected friend who contradicted some observation of mine. Seeing something Seeing something on the ground, I took it to be a snake and I cried out, "Be careful, there is a snake." But my friend calmly replied, "No, no, that is only a rope." I would not reject my friend's statement. Instead, for the time being, I would suspend my judgment about what I had seen, blink my eyes, and look again. I would be willing to accept a contradiction to my prior conclusion. I would again check out what my eyes had to report and then say, "Well, you are right, it is a rope." With this type of faith, one must approach Vedanta with an attitude which holds in abeyance old notions and prejudice for the time being, judgments about oneself, the world, and the Lord, allowing one to approach the words of Vedanta with a fresh mind.
So fresh mind is very important, as we know various people or most of the people approach Vedanta with an open, uh, a mind, a mind not so fresh, with various preconceived notions and ideas gained from various corners. So especially from Neo Vedanta and all, and we all have come to Vedanta like that, and it has become difficult for most, and in most cases Vedanta does not get understood properly, and it's lucky that many of us have actually come to shed those preconceived notions and stick on to the traditional Vedanta. We are lucky in a way,
Yeah.
and yeah, so we must continue to have Shraddha in this,
And
in the
actually,
Vedanta
that paragraph
study. Yeah,
actually should be
please.
copied and to be read by anyone newly joining into this. I mean,
Yeah,
uh, when they're seeking for Vedantic knowledge, first I think they have to read this paragraph.
yes, yes. Yeah, it
Very,
is very important.
very
Puja Swamiji
useful.
always stresses this one in all his texts. The Shraddha is very much stressed because it is very integral to study of Vedanta.
Yes, thank you.
I
Shravana,
I'll continue.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. If you have something to say,
No, nothing. I like reading. If you want to read, then okay, you can read.
Yeah, I'll continue and then you can read in the next step.
Okay.
Sravana is the prime means of knowledge, reflection, and contemplation are aids. Hearing the great statement, Mahavakyas of Vedanta is primary means to gain knowledge of oneself. Atmajnana. The Mahavakyas are wielded as a means of knowledge by a teacher in accordance with the teaching methodology, Sampradaya of Vedanta, in which a context is created to expound the meanings of words of the teaching. The listening of Sravana includes inquiry into and analysis of the meaning of the sentences in order to arrive at clear, ascertained knowledge of precisely what the sentences say. Concurrent with listening, but secondary to the listening and listening associated inquiry, are reflection, manana, and contemplation, nididhyasana. It is through listening alone the knowledge is gained. But as needed, reflection and contemplation are aids to listening. Even though we listen and the meaning of what is being said, what is being heard is understood, the questioning intellect may raise doubts or habit-born obstacles may cloud the understanding. Valid knowledge must be defined and clear. If doubts, vagueness, or interfering habits of thought are present, reflection and contemplation will help. Reflection is the use of reasoning to eliminate the doubts uh, uh, raised by intellect, challenging the self knowledge gained through Vedanta. In terms of the knowledge, the intellect has definite role to play because it is the faculty that assimilates and accepts knowledge with its own presumptions, its own inferences, its own certain derivative notions of knowledge. The intellect poses questions to any knowledge that is gathered. Thus, it is the job of intellect through the use of logic to make knowledge of Vedanta knowledge gained through Vedanta free from any possible doubt put forth by other means of knowledge. The knowledge that has been third, unfolded by Vedanta is non-dual oneness. The Lord and the individual are one. The Lord and I are one. I am limitless, but my perception contradicts what has been heard. Vedanta says there is one, but what I see is many. My perception stands against the knowledge unfolded by Vedanta, and my reasoning based on perceptual data deals only with duality. So, what can intellect do when confronted with knowledge of Vedanta? The fact of non-duality. It can use its duality-based logic to establish the fallacy of duality. The ordinary perceptual means of knowledge cannot reveal non-duality, but the knowledge of duality revealed by these means negate these means can be negated by reasoning intellect itself. In reflection, manana, the doubts arise because of perceived duality are eliminated by analysis that reveals the fallacy in thinking process that causes doubt. Reason inescapably, eh, reason inescapably perception based cannot reveal non-duality, but with its own logic, it can establish that cannot it cannot establish duality. Through the reason's negation of duality, the doubts challenging the non-duality are removed. The enquiry and analysis of Manana also examine and dismiss the contentions of various schools of thought that object to knowledge of Vedanta. Many of the various philosophical systems and schools of pitted against Vedanta have been propounded by sharp wits. Major contenders against Vedanta are armed with logic. It is for the sake of one's own clarity that these schools must be dismissed. The fallacy in their contention seen, the defects in their logic revealed by logic. All questions answered, all shades of meaning analyzed. So, in reflection, one looks at all possible questions and answers them, both the questions of one's own inquiring intellect and arguments raised by contending schools of thought. One answers the questions until the intellect can no longer raise any objections because the knowledge does not group any doubt. There is no coexistence between knowledge and doubt, between knowledge and vagueness. Just as one throws gold into the fire so that it will come out even purer than before, one puts knowledge into the test of all questioning and doubts, one's own and the systematic arguments raised by others, so that it will come out more shining, more shining than before, shining more brilliantly each time it is unfolded by Vedanta. The knowledge shines untouched by anything, unpolluted by any doubt, just as the object of knowledge, the self, is unattached, asanga, to anything. It is the function of reflection to free the process of thinking. Free thinking, thinking that is not stifled or chained, prepares one for the discovery of one's essential freedom by clearing the way through use of logic, all obstructive fallacies entertained by the intellect. It is through free thinking of reflection that distortion of reason introduced by charismatic conditioning can be recognized and eliminated. Leaders living, dead or living, of various schools of thoughts, of various beliefs, often encouraged great following. It must be seen that both ideas and beliefs followed by large number of people for a long period of time can be wrong. Neither the size of its following nor the length of the time entertained establishes the truth of an idea or belief. A large following of for a long time does not establish knowledge. Only a valid pramana establishes knowledge. Knowledge, not the of beliefs or conclusions, not the conclusions or beliefs advocated by some charismatic personality, is the subject matter of Vedanta. If we mix up the personality and the subject matter of knowledge, both are spoiled. The point is that we have had countless lives, limitless number of lives before, and even in this life, we have lived so many years of so many years. So there is a lot of conditioning. There is a lot of conditioning to duality we have. So it is definitely by listening alone, we are given our mind how conditioned our mind is. We won't be able to understand it properly. We won't. So reflection or manana is required, where we question the conditioning and dismiss it by logic, and thereby remove the obstacles to for the knowledge to take place. The knowledge that is heard from Sravana. So what brings to my mind is what Sringeri Acharya said in one of his talks, that we have to, he was talking about Shraddha, that Shraddha is when we use our logic and intellect and our other faculties of our intellect to actually establish um, the what is taught by the Shruti, that is Veda, the Pramana, and not against it. So there can be two kinds of questioning and use of logic. We can use one on one side. We can try to establish Veda wrong, or we can try to establish it correct. Uh, as person with Shraddha will be trying to when he my understanding or the understanding or the what I think fact is in contradiction with um, the Vedanta, then I will be questioning my understanding, not the Veda. So that is Shraddha. So I'll be having a Shraddha in Vedanta or the Veda in general, and I'll be questioning my understanding. So by that way, I can question my understanding, submit it for logic and reasoning, analyze it, and find it wrong and dismiss it. So that kind of so nobody advocates blind faith, but this is the way we should employ our as astikas. We should employ our faculty of logic and reasoning. This is how we should analyze. So, for that, we should analyze different various schools of thoughts, as well as which are the external put by some others, or those doubts and ideas entertained by our own intellect and mind. We should our own notions and the notions we get from other schools of thought. All this we should question and uh, dismiss it so that the Vedanta can be understood properly. So for that, we have to do reflection, manana. Yeah, is there any doubt or comments?
Nothing from my side, Sam.
I guess then we can. Uh, Solving G, can you read the next?
Sure, I can read. Listening and reflection dismiss doubts. Contemplation weakens habitual thinking. Shravana and Manana account for the elimination of all one's doubts on Vedanta. Shravana eliminates the doubts regarding Vedanta as means of knowledge. Manana eliminates the doubts about which is correct knowledge from Vedanta or data from some other means or source. With all doubts removed, the intellect no longer possesses a problem. The knowledge that you are, I am Brahman, I am limitless, is accepted by the intellect. When the intellect does not pose a problem, what problem can there be? There can be one remaining problem, something called habitual thinking, that can interfere with what is known. Habitual thinking is a repetitive thought process which, although may have had some logic behind it initially, has become fixed as a habit, no longer linked to logic. A habit of thought is not logical, it just happens, like a mood. One just gets into it. The kind of habitual thinking, which is a problem for knowledge, is sometimes called viparita bhavana, which means an opposite attitude. Viparita bhavana is an attitude opposite to the fact revealed by the knowledge of Vedanta. An attitude reflected by habitual thinking such as, there is security for me in those things. There is happiness for me in this situation. A wise person of great dispassion, vairagya, with well-assimilated values requires only Shravana, listening to Vedanta for clear, steady knowledge. Or if some doubt is there, Manana finishes the doubt. Afterwards, nothing more is required for knowledge to be firm and clear. But for whom this passion is not so well established, notwithstanding Shravana and Manana, there may be some problem with habitual thinking. When habit-born thoughts oppose the fact of oneself, the knowledge of Vedanta, contemplation, nididhyasana is useful. To eliminate habitual opposite thinking, contemplate. Contemplate on what you know to be the fact of yourself. See the fact that you are fullness that knows no lack. The more familiar one becomes with the fact of oneself, the less will there be the opposite attitude. Nothing new is gained from contemplation. It is from listening Shravana, the meaning unfolded of the words of Vedanta, that the knowledge of oneself is gained. Contemplation, like reflection, is an aid to Shravana. Listening is the means for knowing. Reflection frees the knowledge from doubts. Contemplation eliminates the habitual erroneous notions that obstruct the knowledge. The erroneous notions of opposite thinking are habitual rather than conclusive. Before listening and reflection, such notions were conclusive. Prior to the knowledge of myself, my conclusion was, I am the body. Various things in the world, apart from me, make me secure, bring me happiness. After knowledge, such notions are no longer conclusive. After knowledge, I know that I, limitlessness, am the only secure thing. I know that I, the non-dual reality of creator, creation, and individual, am time-free existence, form-free awareness, absolute fullness that knows neither gain nor loss. However, even though weakened by knowledge, some of the old thinking, born of habit, may continue, until such habitual thinking goes Goes the knowledge gained remains knowledge with certain abstractions. Knowledge may be there, but stifled by obstructions. The fruit of knowledge is not enjoyed. What causes the old thought habits to go? It is by seeing the fact of myself. The more I see myself, the less will be the hold of old thought processes. Continued Shravana, listening to the fact of myself unfolded by the teacher, helps me become more familiar with being in this world, with seeing myself. In addition, in contemplation, I highlight what I have seen and heard, the meaning of certain words that tell the truth of my nature, which I have come to know through hearing and contemplation. I try to see the meaning without any thinking process. With the help of a word or a sound, I just try to see the fact of what I have heard. This simple seeing is called contemplation, nidhyasana. Thus it is by
Yes.
those three means, listening, reflection, and contemplation, that one commits oneself to the pursuit of the value, adhyatma gnana nityatva, the value for constancy in the knowledge centered on self, which simply means constancy in the study of Vedanta. With the analysis of adhyatma, gnana, nityatva, the individual examination of each of the 20 gnana values is complete.
Yeah, so contemplation is again removes the erroneous notions that are born out of habitual thinking. That is, as I said, we have had countless lives, and even in each life, and even in this life, we have lived so many years, and there is a lot of conditioning, past conditioning that stands against Vedanta. Even though we have intellectually, and even though through Sravanam and Mananam, we have conclusively understood that uh, Vedanta is a fact, and understood the matter, the knowledge of self. Still, this habitual thinking will be posing some obstacles. Like we'll be doing what is habitual. We will be just living the same. So here, contemplation on nidhyasana comes to help. And this is for a person without any, not without to yeah, without a great extent of vairagya, and most of us don't have that much vairagya. So nidhyasanam definitely is useful for us to get rid of this habitual thinking. Can we continue now?
Shall I continue or someone else is reading?
Prasunna ji can read the next.
Okay, perfect.
Values. Preparation for listening, reflection, and contemplation. Lord Krishna called self-knowledge jnaya, that which is to
Jnaya,
be
jnanam, like
yeah,
jnaya, ja and jna,
okay.
jnaya.
Jnaya, that which is to be known, because in the knowledge of the truth of oneself, released from all false sense of limitation, one discovers that one is the completely free being that one longs to be. Self-knowledge is liberation, and Shravana, listening, is the primary means for the gain of self-knowledge. For some, Shravana may be all that is necessary, but for others, Manana and Nididhyasana are needed to make Shravana fruitful. So, the three, listening, reflection, and contemplation, together are the sole primary means to self-knowledge. Of these three, listening is the principal independent means, and reflection and contemplation are aids to and dependent upon listening. No, it has to be scrolled
Okay.
down.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
The values which make the mind ready for listening, reflection, and contemplation are a secondary but necessary means for the gain of self knowledge. The values are secondary in the sense that gain of the values alone doesn't bring about self knowledge, but are necessary because without the assimilation in some measure of the values, the primary means, listening, aided by reflection and contemplation, will not work. The values are, sorry, I'm repeating it, the values are secondary in the sense that gain of the values alone doesn't bring about self knowledge, but are necessary because without the assimilation in some measure of the values, the primary means, listening, aided by reflection and contemplation, will not work. Values are secondary to the gain of knowledge, like fuel is secondary to the cooking of food. Fire or heat is the primary means for cooking food, but fuel or some energy source, although secondary to fire, is necessary in order to enable the fire to cook. Fire alone cooks, but there can be no effective fire without fuel. Through listening alone, Through listening alone, which includes reflection and contemplation as needed, we gain self knowledge, but there can be no effective listening in a mind not blessed in relative measure with the values. From Amanitva, Adambitva, through Adhyatma Gnana Nityatva and Tattva Gnanardha Darshana, the values are necessary making the mind ready for Shravana. Therefore, to be prepared to be a student of Vedanta, we need to discover within us, in some measure, a personal value for the 20 values or attitudes. Understanding is the key to making the 20 values our own personal values. Attitudes that are accepted because they have been imposed as advice, counsel, admonition, and or obligation are not personal values but are restraint or conditioning. Attitudes that are accepted because they have been imposed as advice, counsel, admonition, or obligation are not personal values but are restraint or conditioning. Such imposed obligatory values do not make the mind ready for self knowledge. Only personal, assimilated values establish the mental climate for Shravana. The values become personal when The values become personal when we see the value of the value to us very clearly. When we clearly see the value of a value to us, that value becomes our personal value. However, even after the values become personal, for some time we may have to be very alert with regard to the particular attitude. Otherwise, habit will continue to rule. Moreover, once we understand that there is a value for a value, thereby making it a personal value, then after a period of alertness, when we deliberately take whatever actions will make the value more real to us, the value will become assimilated. An assimilated value is very natural. Spontaneously, it is part of us. With alertness, all our personal values become our assimilated values, a natural part of us a natural part of us that without effort or control express themselves spontaneously in our life. When in relative measure this happens, when we see the value of value to us and to some extent have assimilated these attitudes, our mind is ready for Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, hearing, reflection, contemplation, through which we gain the knowledge of the self, that ultimate Gnaya, that which is to be known, which reveals the truth of the self to be time free, form free, full, and complete existence, awareness that knows no want, no limitation, no isolation. Epilogue. The daily value of values. The attitudes and ways of thinking called Gnana, values, are specified for students of Vedanta but are relevant to everyone. Reflecting a keen insight and a profound grasp of the working of the mind, the mental stances described as preparation for Vedanta compromise a mind that is a beautiful objective instrument. Comprise a mind that is a beautiful objective instrument, quite alert, effective, ready for any study or pursuit. Such a mind, not split by internal conflict, undismayed by external adversity, has the best possible preparation for daily life as well as for the study of Vedanta. Values enhance the quality of life, whatever our activities may be. Our daily life gains efficiency and cheerfulness, even radiance, when these values are personal, assimilated norms. We become cheerful persons, both saintly and affective. Generally, we consider a saintly person non affective. The benevolence and accommodation that characterize a saint are seen as accompanied by a lack of efficiency in worldly matters. It is not so. True saintliness makes one True saintliness makes one the most effective person possible in any situation or transaction. It is because such a person can be totally objective. His or her appreciation of given circumstances is not clouded by subjective conditioning. There is neither need for self validation through a particular interpretation of facts, nor for self fulfillment through a desired outcome. A saint clearly sees facts for what they are and can make and act upon a fact based judgment free from subjective interpretation or need. The person not affected by the situation is the person effective in the situation. Thus, although the primary purpose of jnana, as told by Lord Krishna to Arjuna, is to prepare the mind for self-knowledge, when the total value of these values is understood, one sees that these attitudes have the highest personal value for everyone. Values impartially bless and make more effective both the mind of everyday struggler and of the sincere seeker. The everyday struggler seeks fullness in the pursuit of artha, securities and kama, pleasures, whereas the mind of the mumukshu, jignasu, the seeker of knowledge for the sake of liberation, who, having discerned the futility of limited ends and means, seeks fullness through the gain of self-knowledge through the study of Vedanta. Om Tat Sat.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, so basically this was summarizing of the earlier portion, and what Swamiji says in the last portion is very valid because it is not only it is important for everyone, whether one is a student of Vedanta or not. It is supremely important for the students of Vedanta because without these values you cannot gain Atma Jnana. So it is supremely important for us and also important in relative measures for others as well, because without this any kind of learning is not possible. So that is important. And another thing Swamiji addresses is that such a person with all these values will be considered an ineffective or a person without efficiency. That's not correct. If you see Pujya Swamiji's life itself, there is not a place where he has not made his mark. He has not just as a distinguished and teacher of Vedanta, he has established, he has interfered and into the dharmic issues as well, and very effectively than most others, because he had the objectivity uh, like most others, unlike most others. So that kind of objectivity helps us to participate in the world, as Pujisambhi said, without any need for fulfillment through the attainment of some desire or uh, some kind of self, yeah, without the need of self fulfillment from the desire. So uh, that makes one objective and it helps in interacting in the world, and that is when actually we become 100% effective. And other examples like for great dharmikas who have how these values have helped one in the dharmic or the worldly life is like we can take Bhagavan Sri Rama or Janaka, the Maharajas. They definitely they were too much, not too much, sorry, they were very much into this worldly life. They were kings, so they were into this worldly life. They were into the worldly activities much more than any of us. They had to do a lot of things as kings. They had to look after the whole country. So still they could do it better than anyone else because they had this knowledge to back up. If you Sri Rama was embodiment of Dharma. So it is said we should learn Dharma from what Sri Rama does. From Sri Rama, his actions and words, and Sri Rama is walking, talking knowledge. So that's how that's an ideal person. So from Sri Rama, we learn Dharma. So basically, his secret or uh, his power is nothing but the self knowledge, and this for the self knowledge he should have gained these values. So if we take Ramayana, we can see that he has gone to he had a great amount of vairagya initially itself, and then he learned Vedanta or Brahma Vidya from Vasishtha Maharshi, and that's how he um, became a jnani, and that's how Sri Rama became what he is, an embodiment of that. So that the argument that such a person or a saintly person is not effective in the world is we can dismiss through by reading this or understanding these personalities. So session, sorry, our topic is over. Now, is there any comments or anything we can discuss or any discussion or doubts?
I think more than reading, we have to implement it at least to some extent. Uh, may not be in this today's world. It may not be possible 100% to achieve. I'm not. Maybe that is only my thought, but maybe at least 30 to 40% if we're able to achieve, really we are in good shape.
Putting it in percentage is not actually I would say it's not correct, it's not possible also to put it in. So we should actually try to assimilate these values more and more, and definitely 100% is possible because the jnanis we see in this world are an example of absolute assimilation of these values. When you become a jnani, these values are absolutely assimilated. So we have seen several jnanis in at least in India. So this is a great example of absolute assimilation of these values. But since we are not jnanis, we have to assimilate these values to a great extent. And as you said, the implementation is much more important than simply studying this. Simply studying this text is actually injustice to the text itself, I would say. So the implementation, as you said, itself is the more important part.
Hmm.
So, already any comments or anything?
Maybe I would like to write all these value names and their meaning in 1 or 2 lines and keep a chart and test it somewhere
Yeah,
or
that would be
else to
great.
keep reminding. And more than anything, the first thing is it makes life very, very easy if we have these values implemented. But,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whatever we
That's what
think
Swamiji was.
problems are no way the problems when we actually get into this reality.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's what Puji Swamiji was saying in the last part. Yeah, even if one is not a student of Vedanta, then still these values are very important and
Very helpful too. Yeah.
very helpful. Yeah, yeah, very helpful in life. Solveig, were you trying to say something? Please share your thoughts.
Oh, well, what can I say? Okay, of course, like as everybody said before, like the implementation in the life is more important than like reading the text, but still the text serves as an inspiration. And like since it's a pramana, we know like if we apply one or if we implement like somehow
definitely
one
the
of the
text is-
values, it will evolve, and that's quite nice. But what I thought like was very, for me, what is a very, very special line, or well, every line is very special, but it's like the fact, like, if we somehow try to misuse the values, or like if we interfered with our personal personal goals, then it's like we dismiss Vedanta in itself. And I think that's what really is important to keep, not just in mind, but also to keep in heart, like for the value, or for the greatness of Vedanta and the teachers, to keep this in mind and heard. And I think that's very important. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And I
reading
love
the-
this text. I love the value of values very much. So that is all. Oh,
Yeah, definitely. The text is the guide, actually. My only point was that if you read the text and simply leave it at that, that's not doing complete justice to the text. But definitely, the text is the guide and the pramana, as you said, for implementing these values. So it will guide us throughout our life in this implementation.
Yeah, actually, another 10 or 15 days, I'm going to Anekati. So
Oh.
I'll grab a hard copy of this and a few more books which I have listed down.
Yeah,
So
you can find this text in this. Wait one, I'll share.
yeah.
1 second. See, the text I had suggested was this: living intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah. So these two are very helpful, especially this one, living intelligently.
Oh,
If you read living intelligently, I guess that is enough. You need
okay.
not have to read this as well. So that is our value of values.
Right.
Upanishad series and all you can do later. As you
Yeah.
have done Tattvabodha, my personal opinion would be to take that book, this Living Intelligently, as well as it's not like, oh yeah, this is Swamiji's work only. So we can take Drigdrishya Viveka if you want.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
that's very helpful. Drigdrishya Viveka by Swami Shuddha Bodhananda.
Yeah, yeah. I have noted it down.
Yeah, so that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And there is also Panchadashi chapter 1 by same Swamiji Suddhabodhananda ji. It's basically, Prashantji says it's basically Tattvabodha
Okay.
explained.
Okay.
So I have not bought it yet. I have the Drigdrishya Viveka.
Oh, okay. I'm very eager actually. I'm waiting for going there.
Yeah. How many
sure.
days would you be there?
I planned for 2-3 days, but situation didn't allow me. So one
Have
day
you-
I'm going to spend it.
You have to book it actually. If
Yeah,
you
I
want to
booked
stay
it.
for 2-3 days, you great.
I booked it,
So
but
when
for
were you
only
going?
1 day. Sorry, Solviji.
No, sorry. When are you going?
I'm going on 16th. 16th evening
Okay.
I'll be there. Yeah.
Okay, so lovely.
Yeah, thank you.
You are in Chennai, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's or 8 hours, I think.
Actually, I'm going to for my practical exams in Coimbatore.
Oh,
So on 14th itself. So after finishing that, I'll go to ashram and spend 1 day and then